All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I believe today is the first day of spring. Is that right? So happy first day of spring. Does not feel like it in Kentucky, but hopefully we're moving toward warmer days soon. And we are so glad you are with us this afternoon. And today we have again a very full agenda. We're going to be talking about some conflict engagement and enduring conflict. We'll be talking about Indicator 8 and family engagement and kind of giving you some information on the parent surveys that are out now. We'll be talking about dispute resolution and IDEA, and then we also have our Kentucky State Schools with us today to share some information about our state schools. Okay, next slide, Brindley. And so we're going to start with engaging with enduring conflict. And this is Angela Bosley, and she's going to share this presentation with you. And I will say, we did this last year, and this entire workshop was probably one of my favorite ones that we did because we really talk about engaging our parents and how to work smarter and be proactive in the things that we're doing to help our families and our students. So, Angie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Hello, friends. It's great to be with you today. I am a former special education director in Indiana, so a neighboring district. And what I'm going to share with you in our 20 minutes together today, my section is 20 minutes, is a little bit of context and then some practical tools and resources that you as new directors in the field can utilize as you build your practice. So Brindley, maybe I'll just signal, yep, there we go, thank you. So as leaders, we need to think about the difference between technical and adaptive work. Technical work is things that have solutions that are kind of easily solvable. That's the work where we put our procedures and our policies in place. But then the adaptive work that we do for special ed leadership comes with new ideas and innovation and combining our knowledge. And that's what I'm going to talk to you today is about adaptive work. Go ahead, Brindley. So this graphic, last year, Greg Abel was here presenting this information, a legendary person in the field, and I just want to take a moment to honor him and his work. And we lost Greg he unexpectedly passed away this summer. And so we just want to honor his work. And this concept is a concept that he would talk about, where the work that we do as special education directors is that blue space. It's the intersection of leadership, what we're doing to improve student outcomes and save money, right? All the leadership things combined with change implementation. When we're putting new processes in place, we get resistance. There's things that we have to handle in ways that we do that, along with conflict engagement. When we implement initiatives, we maybe sometimes get some conflict that creates from our staff, from our families that we work with. So we're going to talk about that today and what we do with that. Go ahead, Brindley. Thanks. So to give a little context here, I'm a girl of the 80s, raised with Sesame Street, where the episode was brought to you by a letter, right? And so we're going to think about this IEP meeting is brought to you by the letter A. So every time there's an IEP meeting in your schools, these things here are happening. First, there's appropriate. Appropriate is what the law says from the Andrew F. case and the Amy Raleigh case. We know that the law says that we must deliver an appropriate education to students with disabilities. The second A is adequate. That's the funding. And as a former special ed director, I would argue that we're barely adequately funded to provide the services. The third A then is awesome. When our families join us at the IEP meetings, they want the best for their child. They want an awesome education. I am a parent. Many of you are likely parents. We all want the best for our kids. And then the fourth A that I would add to it is advocacy. And that's where we speak up for what we believe the needs to be for our students, for our families. And these currencies of A's are impacting each other in every IEP meeting. So how do we navigate that, especially with some of the challenging times that we're facing right now? So go ahead, Brindley. So what I want to bring to you as special education directors is the concept of enduring conflict. And it comes from the book Staying with Conflict by Bernard Mayer. And these items on the screen are characteristics of enduring conflict. I started reading this book by the recommendation of Greg Abel and thought it was written for special education. It's not. It's a book that's written about conflict across the board, but it applies so much to special education. So in identifying conflicting perspectives, the A in FAPE, it helps us begin to understand this enduring nature of the conflict that is present in that provision of special education. And then it illuminates opportunities for us to support our families and our school personnel with our IEP processes. So rather than treating disagreements as disruptions to be eliminated or things that we worry about or try to avoid, we can recognize that conflict is inherently a part of our system that's tasked with balancing the individualized needs of students along with public resources. The goal, therefore, should not be to eliminate conflict, but to engage with it productively, transparently, and collaboratively. Go ahead, Brinley. And so how we do that in our space is we help people to know how to show up and engage with enduring conflict. And what does that mean? What does that look like? It's that blue space at that intersection there. It means that we remained engaged, that we don't ignore our problems and turn away from them. It means that we work on our problems. We do that through a continual cycle of continuous improvement. We show up in spaces and relate to the people that we're in conflict with. An example there is I always felt as a special education director, it was very important for me to empower my parents with knowledge and the skills and resources so that they could show up in the IEP meeting as well. They also need to be prepared and know how to communicate and collaborate in those spaces. We need to keep the communication going with our families. And we need to deepen our understandings about how we think about these issues. It isn't just maybe the one issue that we have at the table at the moment, but it's the broader issues that exist in our communities for our individuals with disabilities. You know, in the disability community right now, we're concerned about Medicaid as an example, right? That's more than just education. It's a broad-based concern that we have. So how do we show up and have the emotional and intellectual capacity to live with that enduring conflict, to have the stamina to continue to make progress on these goals? And so we're going to dive in to a couple of concepts here. Brinley, thanks. So some practical advice from a former special ed director as your colleague. Leadership. In the intersection, that part of our graphic of leadership, my advice to you, mind your P's. First of all, it's the technical aspects of leadership, right? Your policies, your procedures, your processes. This is something as a new director you should be looking into, making sure you've got a really good case conference agenda to ensure that your meetings are collaborative. You've got a template that you train your staff on what should be taken in the notes in your IEP meetings. You have a process for your staff to schedule case conferences so you don't miss them, and you kind of map it out so that your staff aren't overwhelmed with the conferences happening all at once, and they can show up as a better person because they're not trying to do 6 conferences in one day. Thinking about your handbook and training resources that you share for families as well. So then your people, once you've got all these processes and procedures in place, you've got to make sure your people are engaging with them. So how are you training your staff, your administrators, so that they know their roles? What support are you providing to your people, to your teachers, to the principals, to the families, all of the people? Like as special ed directors, we get this really unique opportunity to support a lot of different people. And making sure that our staff have manageable caseloads and that we know that we are there for them in the work that they do. So moving from the leadership circle into the change implementation circle. So as we work on implementing ideas in special education and the work that we do, it's really important that we have very clear and transparent communication. I would always share with my staff, with families, any information that I was able to give them. That was my style. I wanted people to know the data, the budget, all of the things that we had to work with, because in that, then we can work collaboratively, and my folks can have voice and choice. By folks, I mean my teachers, my families, the board that I would work with, right? An example in that voice and choice in your procedures is involve your staff in that. I had a really great set of procedures for with our school psychologist for evaluating and determining eligibility and reevaluation, right? Well, that great set of procedures got developed with my staff too. So don't feel like as a director you have to do all of that development on your own. Give that agency and share that with your staff as well. Another thing in change implementation, back one just a second, Bradley, is about addressing working conditions. To think about your caseloads of your staff, and I've linked a resource in here, the LEAD IDEA Center, particularly the Principal Navigator on Special Ed Retention is a really excellent resource. And at the bottom of that resource, they have a link to a survey that you can select some questions to utilize with your staff to get a sense of their working conditions and how they're feeling about being supported. All right, Brinley. So the next, I'm going to talk to you briefly about a study that was published by CADRE, the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution in Special Education, the national space for information about dispute resolution. And there's a link here into the study, which just completed, and I helped lead that study. Go ahead, Brinley. Couple of really quick slides here just to acknowledge that what you're going to hear is the perspectives of special education directors across the country about what is needed to enhance their collaborative IEP processes and early resolution of disputes. Go ahead, Brinley. And so a question we asked, and almost 50% of the respondents said that they're experiencing an increase in conflict in education that can't be resolved in an IEP meeting, that they're typical tools and resources in an IEP meeting. This is telling us that the conflicts are rising a little bit, and as special ed directors, we need to have opportunities to resolve these conflicts. Go ahead, Brinley. And also in this study, there are proactive practices. What are our colleagues across the country doing? When you look outside of Kentucky, what's happening in Michigan and California, and what can you learn from that? So I'm just going to highlight a couple because I only have a few minutes with you today. So go ahead, Brinley. One of the promising practices that directors shared is it's critically important to build relationships with families. How do families know who you are? Is your picture and contact information on the district website? Do you attend initial case conferences? Do you show up at functions and like maybe school functions or extracurriculars so that you're involved in your community and you can build those relationships with families? So that's a really proactive practice and something that should be really important for you to do. Go ahead, Brinley. Another proactive practice is empowering parents, educating parents on their rights and how to navigate these processes. In that, encouraging the support of an advocate. And one way that you can do that is by having an effective special ed parent advisory council in your district. Now, I've done whole presentations on that. At the end of these slides that for this section, there are resources that we're not going to have time to talk about today. And one is a link to the National Parent Center that has a national guide on how to start a special ed parent advisory council. And if you can't get to that bigger idea right now, maybe think about just even this spring hosting a lemonade and cookies opportunity for your families to come in and to meet you and to talk about how's things been going this school year, what's on their mind for next school year, and making sure that we again with the empowerment and sharing information, we share the procedural safeguards, we share links to resources and supports for families to build their knowledge of how they can show up at our case conferences. Okay, go ahead. Another proactive practice is to use a continuum of dispute resolution options, not to just have, one way for people to resolve concerns, but to have multiple ways. This slide here is referencing Cadre's continuum, and it links to that. And what it represents here, think about our LRE continuum for our students, right? From the least restrictive to the most restrictive, right? Think about that too in terms of resolving conflict of our, just having a meeting with me as the special ed director over coffee, we might be able to resolve things, to all the way of like legal intervention and litigation involving attorneys and all of the options in between. If you were to go to this resource on the website, all of those blue words that you see listed there are clickable and have examples from other states of practices that they've put in place. Okay, go ahead. Another proactive practice that emerged from this national study was effective routine practices, ensuring that you've got good communication with families. It's it's early communication, it's clear, open, transparent, that you've got really compliant IEPs, that they're well developed and collaboratively written with families. You've got those processes in place. You're supporting your administration. If you should be having regular meetings with your principals to support the work that they do, and a process for leveling up concerns. You can't be in every IEP meeting. That's not realistic, but you can train your staff that when they read some body language that Mrs. Smith might have been a little bit off-putting or angry or whatever, they're seeing some behavior in her that might signal she doesn't feel like a-okay with everything that happened, to have her give you a call and say that teacher, oh, I observed this in Mrs. Smith. Angie, as the director, do you think you could follow up with her? Absolutely, I'll give her a call. I heard you just had an IEP meeting and maybe you had some questions. Is there anything I can help you with? I would rather be the one to talk to her than to have her get onto a social media group and vent her concerns and get opinions from people that aren't educated in the system. So having that process to level up concerns, having a process for continuous improvement. On that bullet, I will say, give yourself a break, right? It's probably not going to be until year 3 until you really feel like you know what you're doing. That's been my experience. Every time I take a new job, the first year, you're just like making a list and hearing things, and your list just keeps getting longer, right? And by the second year, you're probably going to start to implement a couple of things. It'll finally be the third year where you're like, okay, these are some things that I've been working on with the team, and we're starting to see the impact of this. So just know that it's a continual process. Have things on a radar screen and prioritize what you need to do, but don't feel like you have to do it all at once. You'll burn yourself out. Go on, Brindley. So underdeveloped partnerships was another theme that emerged. 60% of the directors in this national study reported that they don't collaborate with the parent center in their area. So I would encourage you, if you haven't collaborated with your parent center yet, do so. Send an introductory email. This is a picture of me collaborating with Jennifer, my parent center person in Johnson County, Indiana, and she was new, and I just said, hey, would you be willing to meet me for coffee? And she said, absolutely. And so we did. She said, but can my son Jack come? Like, absolutely, bring Jack. And they both shared about, he had a really bad experience in elementary school and kind of where they were at now. And we were just able to relate. We shed some tears together, right? And now I'm Facebook friends with Jennifer and Jack, right? I'm no longer in that district, but just that simple coffee where we could just relate as people. They could know why I care so much about special education. I could hear their story. So that way, when Jennifer and I need to be in an IEP meeting together supporting a family, we've already got that speed of trust that knows that we have the kind of basic values for our students too. So I'd really encourage you, just make a connection with your person before you end up in a meeting where things maybe might not be as rosy as it is in a coffee shop. Go ahead, Brinley. So the last slides are just some resources. And Burnley, if you can click through, like give me 3 seconds on each slide. Cadre, I would suggest you subscribe to their newsletter, follow them on social media. They put out tons of resources. Go ahead. They have a link to collaborative advocacy and the principles of that. And I think if we could get away and sort of tamp down some of the zealousness of the advocacy that we're seeing in some of our meetings and support more of a collaborative advocacy approach, that'd be amazing. So there's this resource. There are lots of resources already created on the Cadre website for you about effective meetings and engaging parents. And then go ahead. When somebody comes to me, Angie, I'm a new special ed director, I don't know where to start. I say, do you have the high leverage practices book? This was developed in combination by CEC and the Cedar Center, and it breaks it down into the different areas of like high leverage practices 1 through 3 about communication, collaboration, a lot of what I'm talking about today. A good bulk of them are on instruction. It talks about how to utilize instructional grouping. And so that's a go-to resource when you need to build some practices with your teachers and your team. And then finally, I think it's the parent center one that I referenced. Well, that was super fast and just wanted to give you a little taste, and I appreciate the opportunity through TASTE to be here with you today. If you'd like to contact me for more elaboration on some of these points, you have my contact information. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Angie. That was a great start on our topic today around, conflict resolution, parent involvement, parent engagement in your districts. So Brenda Smith here from TASTE, and you can probably tell NCAA men's basketball tournament started today. Women's starts tomorrow. My team is playing today. So my background, my shirt, go Utah State. I'm really excited. We don't always make it to the tournament. And so, yeah, anyway, just got to get that out of the way. I get a few minutes to talk to you about parent involvement and a little bit about the research around it, and then some specifics around what exactly is required of states and school districts under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This is a topic I love talking about. Parent involvement, parent engagement is extremely important for children's education. And as a parent myself, I know how it feels when involvement goes well. I've had some experience with schools that haven't been great. And generally, it's just a communication issue. It's nothing, the school district staff, didn't have like bad intent or anything. It was just, maybe like a first-year teacher or something who didn't quite know how to engage, how to communicate well. And when parent involvement's going great, I mean, there are great outcomes for the students and for the families as well. So just jumping into it, research shows that academic learning is an acquired interest that students usually gain through social, emotional, and cognitive interactions with meaningful others, like their parents and caregivers. And, none of us are born, with an excitement for going to school. We gain excitements about education and school settings from our family, from our friends. And so when parents place an importance on academic outcomes, generally students are more excited about school and they're more dedicated. And so parent participation can take many forms. It includes attending school meetings, like parent-teacher conference, IEP meetings, or other school events. It can mean parents helping students with their homework, or even just asking their students about what went on in school that day. It can include volunteering and participating in school programs. It includes advocacy on behalf of their student as well. And it involves participating in school decision-making teams. So a lot of times when parents think about involvement, if they're asked about it, just kind of point blank, they might be like, oh, I don't volunteer in the classroom. I'm not really involved with my kid's school. But they often are, they just don't realize it. Brindley, next slide, please. So there are a lot of benefits when parents feel involved in school settings. As I mentioned, students have improved academic achievement. And by having that continual constructive support from the meaningful adults in their lives, they have greater life success. They have better post-secondary outcomes once they leave the school setting. And then also those parents, when they're involved, they become advocates for your school within the community, and they're more likely to support teachers. If they have good interactions with teachers, with staff, if a student comes home, maybe complaining about complaining about a student or a teacher, then they're more likely to be like, well, I know that teacher, so let's investigate that a little bit more and see what's going on. It helps out a lot. And next slide, please. Additional benefits, Rice 2017 showed that involved parents are more likely to exhibit positive attitudes and behaviors towards the school, and their children are more likely to demonstrate passing grades. So just a little bit more evidence there. But as we know, parent involvement isn't simple. There can be a lot of difficulties with it. Just two different studies kind of showed some similar results. One said, well, parents claimed they had no opportunities to actively participate and collaborate with the educators at their school. Teachers at those schools reported that they couldn't get parents to come to IEP school meetings. So sometimes there's this, parents don't understand how, and teachers can't get them there. And then another study reported families report a desire to be more involved with schools, and teachers report they would like more training on how to work with families. So there is definitely a willingness to have parents involved in school from the school and from the family life. Next slide. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, one of the goals is strengthening the role of parents and ensuring families have meaningful opportunities to participate in the education of their children. And you'll notice I, bolded meaningful opportunities. And so under IDEA, to do this, the Individualized Education Program, the IEP, should include a process for those families to help with self-determination for their student, self-advocacy, making sure there's real and informed choice, and that there's active participation in the decision-making process. Next slide, Brindley. And so also under IDEA, to do that, in the IEP process, schools must provide parents with prior written notice of the IEP meeting. And this goes back to that communication piece I was talking about earlier. You know, I've been handed my prior written notice as I've walked into the IEP meeting. And, you know, that doesn't really reach that intent to make sure you're communicating with parents well before they walk into the IEP, and that they're included early in the process. The IEP meeting should include a review of parental rights, and parents and the students should be active participants to determine the student's disability classification, the school setting placement, what is the least restrictive environment, and then setting the IEP goals. And again, you know, parents should be walking into an IEP meeting, you know, having had no progress reports on their student. You know, if they're getting active communication from parents leading up to the IEP, then they'll know if the goals are appropriate. But if they've seen like no progress reports and they go in, they're going to not be able to give them very good input on those things that they should be helping to determine. Next slide, please. And so we know that practically, everybody wants parent participation, but sometimes it's really difficult to implement. And this can be because of schedule conflicts between when school staff are available and when parents are available to meet because of their work schedules, their home lives. A lot of times staff would love to have more communication with parents, be sending more information home, to be working on those things, but because they have such a large caseload, workload, they just don't have time to do that. And then sometimes parents are unaware of how to fully participate or are intimidated by the school system. So this goes back to, you know, not necessarily knowing, what does parent involvement mean? You know, am I just, you know, asking my kid about school? Does that help out? You know, do I have to be volunteering when I can't because of my work schedule? Or, you know, just going into the school setting, meeting, you know, with the LEA representative, you know, that whole list of people who are required to be in the IEP meeting can be very intimidating for parents. I'm going to drop in the chat a link. Last month, Ed Week had an article where they interviewed school staff at Fayette County Schools about their family engagement system and how, you know, one strategy doesn't work for every single district because each district has its own demographics, its own culture. And so kind of the article talks about how they've been adapting the needs of their district with encouraging staff and training them around family engagement. So that just came out last month. I thought it'd be fun to share where it is, you know, a good story from Kentucky. Next slide. So kind of getting into the nitty gritty of what is federally required. I know Marcy's going to talk a little bit more about family engagement and after this. So I will cover these federal nuances before I turn it over to her. So every 6 years, each state must submit to the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs a state performance plan. And in that plan, they set some goals, some targets for the 18 indicators under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And then each year, the state turns in an annual performance report, which gives measurements for each of those indicators and compares it to those targets that they set in the state performance plan to see how well they're doing with their goals. And this, the APR, the annual performance report, is designed to measure how well IDEA is being implemented by states. And so, you know, your state is turning in its APR every year. The Kentucky state staff are working on that, but they are in turn gathering information from the districts to compile the APR. And once the Office of Special Education Programs receives APRs, they in turn give each state a determination about how well they are meeting IDEA requirements. And so they will say your state's either meeting requirements, they need assistance, they need intervention, or they need substantial intervention. So that ranking is issued every year. Kentucky meets requirements, and so that's always great to be able to show that you are meeting requirements of IDEA. Next slide. So indicator 8 measures parent involvement. You're probably a little bit familiar with this survey that comes out. This slide is taken directly from the APR, the information. So what that parent involvement survey is measuring is the percent of parents with a child receiving special education services who report their child's school facilitates parent involvement as a means of improving services and results for their children with disabilities. It's a pretty simple measurement. It is a percentage. So you take the number of parents who completed the survey and said that their school was facilitating their involvement, and then you divide it by the total number of parents who responded to the survey, and then times it by 100 to turn it into a percentage. Next slide. So a few other things, sampling's allowed. I'm not going to talk about that other than just mentioning it because Kentucky sends the survey to every student's family receives the surveys, where some states only pull a sample. Go back, Brinley. Sorry, I was going to talk about the other two bullets. So the survey, it is required that a copy of the survey be submitted to with the APR. So anytime it's revised, that has to be submitted and approved. And then the other thing that is reported is the response rate, which is just the number of families that responded divided by the number of families who received the survey. And so the response rate is reported, and it's compared to the previous year's response rate to show if there's some improvement. And then the state must also include a description of strategies they're using to increase that response rate, particularly with any groups that might be underrepresented, which does lead us to the next slide. And so when the state's looking at the response rate, they have to identify if there's any potential non-response biases and what steps they're going to take to reduce those biases. So for example, if your state demographics, making up some numbers, if 60% of your students with IEPs are male, but the results of your survey only have 30% of the respondents being for male students, then the state would need to look at that and be like, oh, how are we going to increase response rates so that the response we're getting more closely aligns with our state's demographics and represents it. On the APR, states must consider race and ethnicity when they're looking at response rate and trying to make sure that they are getting, the appropriate proportion of responses from race and ethnic groups. But then they also must look at one of the following, either age or disability category, gender, a geographic location within the state, or another demographic category that is approved through a stakeholder input process. And so that's it. I don't see any questions in the chat, but those are the requirements for reporting under parent involvement. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcy to talk a little bit more about family engagement in Kentucky.
Thanks, Brenda. Hey, everybody, I'm Marcy. Brinley, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. There is my picture. I will have my contact information at the end of the presentation, but I am part of the guidance and support branch here within OSEEL. And so many of you maybe have called or sent emails to us to just answer questions that you have. And so I might be one of those voices you get on the other end of the phone when you call guidance and support to try to get some answers to your questions. Next slide. So first, as Brenda mentioned, we'll talk about family engagement, and then I will touch on the survey a little bit as well. So family engagement in Kentucky is not all that different from what Brenda covered at the national level, of course. I do want to emphasize it is a two-way partnership between the schools and the families. Families should be involved and meaningfully engaged in their child's education. And for students with disabilities specifically, that also includes the parent's capacity to meaningfully participate. So we know sometimes our parents of children with disabilities, sometimes they have disabilities as well. And so it might be a different way that you approach those parents or a way that you communicate a little bit differently with those parents. So please make sure that you understand that a piece of this is that it includes the parent's capacity to be able to be engaged meaningfully. And that might look a little bit different if you have students who do not have IEPs. Next slide. So parent engagement should be school facilitated. And specifically, that means that the school has responsibilities in facilitating parent and family engagement and ensuring that families are supported through equitable processes and practices and policies. I know Angie a little bit ago touched a little bit on policy, and so that's just as important for our population as it is for the general population. Of course, the IDEA does outline schools' responsibilities in facilitating meaningful engagement as part of the IEP process as well. Next slide. So we know that indicator 8 is the parent engagement indicator, but engagement is a lot more than just an indicator. So we've already talked about some studies, several different research things that have gone on. And then Dr. Karen Mapp and some of her colleagues, they reviewed 51 of these studies, and this was back in 2002. So of course it has happened more and more since then. But in reviewing those 51 studies, they have found that children whose parents are meaningfully engaged can see higher grades, the enrollment in advanced programs, AP courses, things like that. Children who are twice exceptional, so they might have an IEP, but they're also gifted. Those enrollments, those numbers go up quite a bit. They continue to pass on to the next grade level. Of course, improved attendance, better social skills, higher graduation rates. And so all of those can work together. And if parents are meaningfully engaged, as we've already talked about, students are more likely to be engaged in their schooling, their school community as a whole as well. Next slide. Family engagement can also go a long way in preventing some conflict. And I will reiterate that a lot of the phone calls I receive from parents, it does go down to just either miscommunication or a lack of communication. And so when families are engaged, they feel heard, they feel seen. That can really, really go a long way in preventing conflict between parent and teacher, between parent and the district, and certainly within our umbrella of special education, it can go a long way. This quote, perhaps the best and easiest way to manage conflict is to prevent it in the first place. Next slide. So when you think about your parent engagement, consider the communication that you are doing with your parents. Here are just some guiding questions for us to think about today. And if we have time for a breakout session towards the end, these might be some things that we discuss. So is your communication meaningful? And is it two-way? There's a difference between parent engagement, true engagement, and parent involvement. Involvement is more usually a one-way communication, but engagement is a two-way conversation. Is it ongoing? Are you communicating only when things aren't working? You know, nobody likes it when that teacher calls and, oh, there's another problem today. Bill got in trouble again today. Jessica did something again today. You know, try to call with some of those good things, or email just real quick. Wanted to let you know we had a fantastic day. She made it all the way through lunch. We had 0 behavior incidents. It just takes a few moments to send a message, or a quick email, a quick Class Dojo, whatever app or anything that your district uses. Also, think about the family's preferred mode of communication. Here in Kentucky, we have lots of languages. We provide the survey, which we'll talk about later, in 6 languages, but that does not even begin to cover the different languages that we have here in Kentucky. And so do you need to use a translation app to get a message to a family in a different either mode of communication or language that they use at home? What are we not hearing? Who are we not hearing from? Think about why. How can we get those parents more involved in the school and in the district? And then again, do families know how to contact you? Angie touched on this earlier as well. Is your photo on the website? Is your business phone number on the website? Make sure that they have a way to contact you. I get so many phone calls and parents will say, I didn't know there was a director of special education. Who is that person? How do I get in touch with them? That happens all the time. So make sure that they have a way to get a hold of you and can see your picture. That way, if they see you at a ball game, hopefully not Walmart, but if they see you at a ball game, that they can come up and introduce themselves and, hey, I've got 2 students within your special ed programs here in your district. And they can put a face with a name. Next slide. It also can be a change of mindset. So instead of thinking about, I'm doing this for my parents, I'm doing this for my students, do things with your parents, do things with your students. And having that little shift of a mindset, which may take some time, please extend yourself some grace. Don't think that this is going to happen tomorrow because we discussed it today. But having that change in mindset can help really increase that engagement. Remember, the goal is to get parents engaged meaningfully and not just involved, but truly engaged. So again, look at those protocols, the procedures. Do they reflect and embrace an equitable partnership? Partner with your families to look for gaps, and not just with our survey, with the Indicator 8 survey, but even things just there at your local district level. Give surveys to them. How can we improve things? Have those lemonade and popcorn nights like Angie discussed. Have conversations. Try to form some groups. A little bit of information can really go a long way. And then when they are more meaningfully engaged and they feel more seen and more heard, that will probably increase your numbers for lots of different areas as well. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about the survey a little bit. Go ahead. So as you know, Indicator 8 does measure the percentage of parents with a child receiving special education services who report that schools facilitated parental involvement as a means of improving the services and the results for children with disabilities. Go ahead. So the survey is available online, and we have paper options as well. So you can scan that QR code now if you'd like to, and it should take you there. We also I've got websites and different things throughout this, and you can always email me too. Again, my contact information will be at the end. It does consist of 12 questions. They're multiple choice. Some of them have a drop-down menu. There's one or two, I think, with a short answer. We do the 6-month window here in Kentucky, and so it opened in January and it will close at the end of June, and that has not changed from year to year for quite a long time. I don't anticipate it'll change for 2026 either, so that should stay the same then. And currently we have 6 languages: Amish, Arabic, English, Somali, Spanish, and Swahili. Next slide. So the first question is that question that we report to APP or the APR, SPP APR. And the question is, did the school involve you in a meaningful way to improve services and results for your child? So again, that's the federally reported data. That's the only one really that we give them as part of that SPP APR. But then the other questions we do take as Kentucky, and we'll talk about our partners at the University of Kentucky here in a few minutes. They help us get an understanding of the parental, their understanding, of the IEP process. It helps us get a gauge and a feel for their feelings about the current involvement with them in their child's school and in their education. And it gives us a sense of what's working and what is not working. And so then we can take that data. We break it down quite a bit. Well, we don't, but again, our partners at University of Kentucky break it down. We get a report each year, and then we can share those with you at the district level. And you can start to look at how can I use this data to improve my results. Again, not just for Indicator 8, but for lots of areas of the school process and within your district policies and procedures as well. Next slide. So once we get the data, I'm sorry, this is to share the survey with districts, I'm sorry. So we provide it to you and to all the other doses in the state, and also the preschool coordinators. We provide the sample parent letters, printer-friendly surveys. Those all get sent to you. They're on the One Stop. There's always a link to those. We try to send that out in each of the news you can use that come to you. I think one just went out today. Please remember, with the One Stop, teachers do not have access to that. That is just for DOS and others who you designate. So if you have assistant DOS or coordinators in your district, those they can have access as well, but it is not for teachers. So what we ask for you to do is access the letters and the surveys and then send those separately instead of just forwarding the DOS One Stop information or forwarding the news you can use to them. You can determine the best way to disseminate those surveys to families. So we actually had a shareholder group a couple weeks ago, and one DOS was telling us that she starts getting the surveys out not until April, which is okay. That's within the 6-month window. There's still plenty of time to get the surveys done. She just feels like right after Christmas, it's too soon. There's too much going on. Schools are really busy. ARC chairs are busy. You've got kids who are transient and who have moved in. So they start in April. They try to get as many in before the craziness of graduation starts come, the 1st of May or the end of April. And then they can do a little bit more following graduation if needed before the end of June. So you can decide what works best for your district. Each district in Kentucky is so different. It's, we know it's very different from Northern Kentucky to Eastern Kentucky. And so do what's best for your district. We also have things like Kentucky Spin. Our Center for Parent Resources is Spin for Kentucky. So they're a great partnership team. If you need some resources there, let me know. I can always shoot you an email with some resources, and they're on the website as well. Next slide. So then for you to take those surveys and share them with parents, here are just a couple of examples or a couple ways that it might help increase your response rates. Use more than one method to communicate. So you can send them through Infinite Campus blasts or email blasts. If you do use Dojo or Remind app or any of those things, you can do it through there. Partner with case managers and ARC chairs. Certainly that could help. Ensure that parents know the survey can be accessed from their phones. They can do it right there with a QR code. You could have a QR code sitting on the desk during the ARC meeting. Parents can scan it right then, and then they complete it when they leave if they need to. Certainly after an ARC meeting, I know some schools will have little workstations set up so that parents can complete the survey either before an ARC, after it, or if they just come to pick up the student for an appointment, they can just access the survey right there. It doesn't take that long to fill out. Lots of the questions are optional as well, so they can do it in just a couple of minutes. And then work together, contact your other DOS who are in this cadre with you, or if you have a mentor DOS who's close by, ask them, hey, how do you increase your response rate? We're kind of struggling. So what do you guys do? And try to make it fun too. You can have little celebrations for your teachers and your case managers. You can have a little competition maybe with the district next door. All of those things can help you increase your response rates. Okay, next slide. So just some quick reminders. The survey is meant to be anonymous. So please do not, hey, just fill out your answers, Mrs. Brown. I'll turn it in for you. I'll fill it in for you. Please do not do that. In order for them to feel safe, we need the surveys to remain anonymous. Also encourage the online participation. I know that not every district can do that, and that's okay. That's why we offer different ways to fill out the survey. The online participation is just, it's a little easier, for the computer to do the numbers work. Then nobody has to scan in the paper copies, etc. So we do encourage that if possible. And always remember that it is time sensitive. The deadline is June 30th each year. Next slide. Okay, here are some quick FAQs that we receive pretty often. So again, with it being anonymous, staff members cannot take the survey on behalf of a parent. If a student is 18 and they are representing themselves, then they certainly can complete the survey. This year's surveys are online, or of course there are paper copies available. And then who can you contact if you have questions? You can contact me here at KDE as the Indicator 8 lead, or our partners at the Human Development Institute at University of Kentucky, and I'll get his information to you here in just a moment. Okay, next slide. So again, just another QR code, quick to get to the survey, to the parent involvement website. There's a link as well. So if you were able to pull up the slide deck that I think Brenda had put it into our chat at the beginning of our session, you should be able to click on that. Again, 6 languages. It's available on the One Stop. Okay, next slide. So if you have data specific questions, including reports, district specific reports, please get a hold of Tony. He is at the Human Development Institute at UK, and his phone number is listed there. I can provide your numbers to you. Tony and I try to meet each month. So the second week of each month, those numbers are available that I can give you just a quick, hey, your percentage is currently at 12%, or you have 16 surveys completed. I can give those to you each month if you email me or give me a quick phone call. So my contact information is there. Okay, next slide. So I've got 2 slides full of resources. There's a lot here, and I know that there's a lot here, but we are trying to just help you, have as many resources at the ready that you may need. The bottom resource on this slide is something that came out in Special Ed Connection probably about 6 months ago or so. And it was just a really quick article that parent involvement errors often come down to 2 big things. So that's a quick read. You all should have access to Special Ed Connection. If you do not, please email me and I can get the information to the proper person to have you added to Special Ed Connection. But as a director of SPED in our state, you do get access to that from our cost. Okay, next slide. And again, just some extra Kentucky resources, as well as a couple of other national resources that you can see there. And I think there's just 1 or 2 more slides. Go ahead, Brinley. Okay. Thank you all so much for listening. Please email me with questions, not just Indicator 8 questions, but since I'm guidance and support, this is what I do all day, every day. I'm special ed customer service for you all. So please email with questions or concerns, and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcy. Did anybody have any questions? I didn't see any in the chat. Or does anybody want to say, hey, our district is knocking this out of the park. We get a huge percentage of participation in our parent surveys, and here's how we do that. Okay. All right. All right, not hearing anybody else. Frank, we will turn it over to you to talk about dispute resolution.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Frank Podobnik from TACE. I'm going to just give a brief overview of the dispute resolution options in the IDEA before the OSEEL staff fill you in more fully on things that are going on in Kentucky. But just one thing before I jump into this. Dispute resolution is at one end of the parent participation scale continuum, really. And so I would encourage you strongly to, think about the techniques and strategies that Angie talked about early, that Brenda talked about with you in terms of encouraging parent participation and in improving your communication and engaging conflict when it does arise, and it will arise. Even in the best of circumstances, there will be conflict, and engaging that. And if you do those things well and effectively, you'll spend much less time at this end of the continuum, because those are the things that are the foundation of the complaints that we see. And I'll let the Kentucky staff talk more specifically about your state, but just know that strong, effective communication and strong family relationships and partnerships with your PTI, as Angie brought up, and those kinds of things, all reduce the number of complaints that you do see in your district. So there are a couple of IDEA regulations here. The procedural safeguards and due process procedures for parents and children. And there is the section on discipline procedures, because in the cases of kids who have been removed from school and you're in the manifestation and discipline process, either the district or the parent can request a expedited due process hearing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Brendan, go ahead. So dispute resolution is in the IDEA because it's there to protect the rights of parents and students with disabilities. Okay, it provides mechanisms that are outlined that for schools and families to resolve disputes, and again, with very differing levels of outside intervention. So the first, at first we have informal dispute resolution processes where parents and school districts can talk with each other and work through an issue. And again, based on having built strong relationships and that work at the front end of this system. But then if it does come to an unresolved dispute, the parents have the right to request or to file a written state complaint. The school district and the parent can agree to engage in mediation. There is a parent can or school district can file for a due process complaint. And as part of the due process complaint system, there is a requirement for a resolution session where the parent and the school district have one last opportunity, if they choose to engage in it, to get together to find some resolution to the issue that is at hand. Okay, so Brindley, if you would. Just real quickly on written state complaints, there are a number of procedures that are set out in the regulations. There's a 60-day time limit after a complaint is filed, and it can only be extended under exceptional circumstances. And the definition of exceptional circumstances is pretty narrow. In fact, if you remember, if you were around during the COVID closings of schools and those things, OSEEL came out and said, these aren't exceptional circumstances. You still have to meet the 60-day timeline. So it has to be something really exceptional. The state must carry out an independent on-site investigation, give the complainant the opportunity to submit additional information if they have any, something occurs to them, and provide the public agency, the school district, with the opportunity to respond and with a proposed resolution of the issue, or an opportunity for the parent and the public agency, if both parties agree, to engage in mediation. But the timeline is 60 days, period. Okay, so all of that has to happen quickly if it's going to happen within that 60-day window. So if you would, move on. So mediation then can be requested either on its own or again as part of it's an option when there has been a complaint filed, has to be voluntary on both parties' parts. Can't be used to delay or deny the parent's right to a hearing or any other rights. So if you agree with, if parents and school district agree to enter into mediation, it has to be very timely, and it has to happen, you either have to come to a resolution or not quickly, and you either resolve it and have an agreement, or you move on to the due process hearing, or to resolve, or to the following through with the state complaint investigation. Must be conducted by a qualified and impartial mediator who's trained. So the state has to maintain a list of trained mediators. And if the state is selecting the mediator, they have to do so on an impartial basis, meaning it's on a rotation, or some other method. They provide 3 names in the districts, and the parents get to a strike list, essentially, those kinds of things. And the state must bear the costs of that mediation in this circumstance. Okay. All right. Then the last, the last process here we're going to talk about is due process. And hopefully, throughout your career, this is something you won't ever have to encounter. It is not pleasant. Excuse me. And one of the reasons that we so strongly talk about parent involvement and parent engagement and early conflict resolution is because when you get to this stage, it is an outside person who has total control over the information and the resolution of this. And it is very, can be, not always, but can be very damaging to the relationship between the parent and the school. And the parent and the school have to continue to be able to work together even after this. And so it just brings a lot of anxiety and stress and difficulty into the circumstances. So if you have an opportunity to avoid getting this far, I encourage you to take that. Okay. Either the parent or public agency may file a due process complaint. It has to be for a violation in the identification, evaluation, placement, or the provision of FAPE to the child. And it must allege a violation that occurred not more than 2 years before the date the parent or public agency knew or should have known about the violation. And that can result in some really kind of unusual things, that should have known piece. When a parent becomes aware of something, maybe more than 2 years after it occurred, and under the law, they can still file a due process complaint, but it ends up in this situation where things get really drug out. And so anyway, this is different than, and I didn't mention this under written state complaints, but written state complaints can essentially be filed by anybody on anything. And the state has to have a process of reviewing those and determining if they're a valid or an actionable complaint under the IDEA. States sometimes get complaints about things that have absolutely nothing to do with IDEA. And so, those get dismissed. But here it's very specific. It's the parent or the public agency that can file, parent or the school district. And there are times when it sounds odd for the school district to be filing a due process complaint, but there are times when that's appropriate, and that really comes up in the discipline arena most often. Okay, but we can always talk more about that. Really, would you move on, please? Okay, so the complaint has to contain the name of the child, their address, the name of the school, a description of the nature of the problem of the child and the facts relating to the problem, and a proposed resolution of the problem to the extent known. Now, sometimes parents have a hard time with these things, describing the nature of the problem and the facts relating to the problem and a proposed resolution. Sometimes they don't have enough knowledge about education or the system or those things, so they have a difficult time with that. Providing a proposed resolution. So other times they'll have a very specific idea of what should be happening. Okay, so as soon as the complaint is received, the complaining party is supposed to notify the district. The state will also notify the district of the complaint, receipt of the complaint. And if the school district has not sent a prior written notice regarding the subject of the complaint, within 10 days of being notified, they must provide a response that includes these pieces, which is the prior written notice requirements, right? They must explain why the agency proposed or refused the action that's raised in the complaint, a description of other options the IEP team considered and the reasons they were rejected, description of each evaluation, assessment record, or report that was used in the decision-making process, and description of other factors that are relevant. Yeah. So if the district had not already provided those things in response to, for example, if there's something that comes up in an IEP meeting, the parent requests something, and the district says, no, we're not going to do that, and here's why, and they provide prior written notice, which is what should happen, then this step isn't necessary. It's already been provided. But if it happens, the parent files the complaint and you have not provided that prior written notice, then you have to do it at this point in time. Okay. All right. And then again, there is must be the offer of a resolution session within 15 days of receipt of the complaint. The LEA must convene a meeting with the parents and relevant members of the IEP team to discuss the complaint and the facts. Okay. And if the LEA has not resolved the complaint within 30 days, the due process hearing may occur. The 45-day timeline for the hearing starts at that point. Okay. But due process is sorry, I'm trying to think of the right word. Due process hearings can get extended for long periods of time. And if a due process complaint after a decision is made is then taken to district court, the process can drag on for many years. And that's where you see things like in the NDRF decision that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. That young man was in the 4th grade, I believe, when that was filed, and he was out of school before the Supreme Court made their determination on his 4th grade IEP. It can take a very long time, right? So these things get very expensive very quickly. Okay, Brindley, if you would. So then there's the hearing must be conducted by an impartial hearing officer that's not an employee of the SEA or the LEA. And there is guidance that says that just because the SEA pays this person to do this, it does not make them an employee of the SEA. So they're contracted, and they don't have any interest that conflicts. Much like in a court, they have the responsibility to recuse themselves from a hearing if they're selected, if there is a conflict of interest. They have the responsibility to take themselves out of it. Okay. Party cannot raise issues at the due process hearing that were not raised in the complaint unless the other party agrees to allow it. Okay. So those things are in place to prevent either party from being blindsided by something, right? And it's important that you have, if there is a disagreement, that both parties are fully informed and have the opportunity to develop a reasonable response to the complaint and the issue. All right, Brindley, one more. Yeah, I think that was it for me. So if there are any questions about the federal part of this, I'll be happy to entertain them, but you're going to get much more information now from Tara about Kentucky and how Kentucky handles these things, and that will answer, I'm sure, most of the questions that you may have. So we'll turn it over to Tara.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Harmon, and I am an exceptional children consultant with the Division for IDA Monitoring and Results with the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Next, please. So the first part of the dispute resolution kind of process is there's a disagreement. And so what happens? We do suggest in OSEEL that the parent or the complainant does contact the local director of special ed. Several times these scenarios might be trying to be handled at the school level, and the director is not aware of it. And so we do encourage that when we get the complaints. I know that our technical assistants, the sister division that Marcy said she was in, that she does some complaints, they encourage it as well. But if for some reason that is skipped, it's okay. We do encourage it. But if it is skipped, the process in Kentucky is the 3 parts of dispute resolution is mediation, formal written complaint, and due process, similar to what has already kind of been discussed, but I'm going to break it down for Kentucky's version. Next slide, please. So what is dispute resolution? So under IDA, there are regulations that provide specific options for dispute between parents, public agencies, sometimes an advocate or other people, district staff members. I'm going to kind of explain the difference of who can submit a complaint and who can do different processes. But that's really what happens. We follow IDA guidelines, but we also follow our Kentucky administration regulations. And so that QR code is basically just some guidance for questions and answers that have been asked frequently. Next slide, please. So the 3 types, again, of dispute resolution that Kentucky handles, my division that I'm in handles, is mediation, formal written complaints, and due process, and OSEEL. The division I'm in handles formal written complaints, which I'll talk more about that in detail, but they are not like, you don't start at mediation and then you go to formal complaints. So they're not lateral or linear. You can do them in any order depending on how the parent or the complainant feels. Next slide. So mediation, we encourage this. It is a voluntary dispute resolution process between the parent and the district. So this can only happen between the parent and the district. And it would be, again, with an impartial mediator trained in mediation techniques. They work together to try to settle the dispute and develop a final agreement. If there is an agreement, a resolution, then it is legally binding and written in an agreement that is signed by both parties. It is enforceable. Next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So who can request for mediation? Again, this is between the local school district, an SEA, LEA, and the parent of the child with a disability. So you're going to find out that in the written complaints, anyone can request, but a mediation is voluntary between the district and the parent. And in Kentucky, we do offer this mediation request form that you would fill out, and it sends directly to our Office for Legal Services at the Department of Education. It does not come to my division because it is impartial, but it would come to the Kentucky Department of Education. And that's a QR code and the link to that form. Next slide, please. So the big part of what I handle in that division for ID monitoring results, DIMMER, is formal written complaints. So a formal written complaint is a written statement that alleges that the school district has violated the requirement of state, which is our Kentucky Administration Regulations, KAR, or federal special ed law, IDEA. The formal complaint must be filed to us at OSEEL within 1 year of the alleged violation. So this is 1 year. So if you turn something in today on March 20th, we could go back to March 20th of 2024. And this can be filed by a parent, a student, an advocate, staff members in the district. We've seen it happen, teachers, bus drivers. So a formal written complaint can be done by anyone. Next slide. So like I said, an organization or an individual may file it. Sometimes we have different groups, legal groups that file them. The party filing the complaint must forward a copy to the school district. So if it comes to us, there's a question that we do that asks to see if it's been sent. It can be submitted through U.S. postal mail, email, fax, or hand delivered. And it also, just like Frank said, has a 60-day timeline. That's a regulation, a federal regulation, but also in Kentucky's regs. And again, 1 date from the file, 1 year from the allegation. And if it's involving multiple students, it doesn't have to be like someone's English class or someone's special education class. If it's more than one student, then it would be considered a class complaint. But it doesn't have to be, Miss Harmon's class. It just means more than one person. Next slide, please. So when you submit, or an agency or an organization submits a formal written complaint, these are the 9 steps or 9 things that they have to have. You have to have a statement of the alleged violation, either under that 707 KAR Chapter 1 or IDA regulations, an alleged violation in one of those areas. You have to state the facts around that allegation. You have to have a signature. So it needs to be signed or cursive print, but it needs to look like a signature. We need to know the name of the student, the residence, and contact information. So if you just put a kid's nickname, we have to have the full student's name. We have to know the school they're attending in which the violations occurred. Sometimes people move and they're filing it on a past district. Then you would put that that's where you think the alleged violation came from. Even if you're in a new district, you could put that on the form. The description of the nature of the problem, again, including facts. Sometimes they're facts related to IDA, and sometimes they're just facts that tell the story. You have to also have a proposed resolution to the problem to the best of your knowledge. Sometimes parents don't know what a resolution might be, but they're going to try to put their best. I want the help for my student. I want it to be looked into. And then again, you have to certify that you have sent a copy to the district, the LEA. The QR code on this slide is the form that we do provide. It is not mandatory that you use the form. It is recommended and it is required under our regs that we have a form available, but you don't have to use it. If you don't use it, you do have to make sure you include these 9 things, which the form has those 9 things on it to kind of just help guide you through the process. Next slide, please. So once we get a formal written complaint, whether that's from a parent or an advocate, like I said, our process at OSEEL in the division is we're going to date stamp it. So if it comes in today, it's date stamped for March 20th. We're going to do a jurisdictional review. If you meet those 9 components, then we're going to send out a notification letter. If it does not, we're going to send out a non-jurisdictional letter, which I'm going to talk about in a few more slides. And then the district has the opportunity to self-investigate and create a report if they so choose or elect, but they will be required to provide supporting evidence and documents requested by DIMR, but there's a self-investigation form that they can do. The parent will have the right to respond, or the complaint has the right to respond, and we're going to look for that. They have so many days from when that notification letter goes out. Then DIMR, we will investigate within that 60-day timeline. So we will create a report, which is called a report of findings and facts of conclusions and laws. And if there is a violation to the allegation, then there would be a correction action item or plan. Next slide. I'm going pretty fast, so if there's comments or questions, please put them in the chat bar. So again, like I mentioned, we're going to do that jurisdictional review and notification. So the complainant or the parent, whoever sent that, is going to receive either a notification letter or a non-jurisdictional letter. The non-jurisdictional letter is going to highlight any part of those 9 parts I discussed a couple slides back that are missing. Oftentimes our signature is missing, or the facts around IDA are missing and they just need to be tweaked. But you have 10 calendar days to kind of resubmit that information if it is missing before we would send a dismissal letter. And that can be submitted email, mail, or hand-delivered fax again. And again, we do put in the letter a very clear date that says, you know, in 10 days, you have 10 days to submit the missing information. And if not, then we would send a dismissal letter. Next slide, please. If you do have a notification letter, so all 9 components are there, then the district would receive a notification letter, which outlines the allegations of the IDA violation or KAR with supporting facts. So it's kind of in a chart. And so we're going to have the regulation, and then we're going to have it linked, and then we're going to have what the parent or complainant said and how that relates to the regulation. It's going to have a statement in there about mediation. We do encourage that, even if it's come in, that is a constant thing that can happen. We're going to tell you the timelines again, so that when that notification letter came out, if all 9 parts were in there, that starts the 60 days. If you got a non-jurisdictional letter, the 60 days is on pause until either the dismissal letter is sent or we get all the components to you, and then that 60 days would start from that new date. But it would tell you the 60-day timeline and when the complaint was received, and then the year timeline. There's a statement in there that says the district, again, has the opportunity, if elected, to self-investigate. And it also says if we intend to conduct an on-site visit. So since COVID, we haven't been going on site as much, but we still can. But if we don't come on site, things will happen kind of virtually through Teams or Zoom. And then a statement requiring that all correspondence moving forward and sent to DIMR shall also be sent to the district or the opposing party. So if that's a parent or a complainant, if they email me, it should also go to the district, or if the district emails me, it should go to the parent as well. Next slide, please. So this is the template that districts can use in the self-investigation. They don't have to use it, but they can use it. We have to provide it. This is due with the supporting evidence or the documents that we request, which commonly we're going to request the individual education program, that IEP. We're going to ask for conference summaries. We're going to ask for meeting notices. We're going to ask for contact logs. Those are not optional. If we've asked for them, the self-report is optional, but all those will have to be submitted back to DIMR and the corresponding opposing party within 18 calendar days. So the 60-day timeline, all these timelines are calendar days, not school days, holidays, it counts in those days. So 18 days, calendar days. Next slide. So there is an appeal process, kind of like mentioned before. It's 15 days business days from receiving the final decision. That can happen. Anyone can do it, the complaint, the parent, the school. If you don't agree with it, you can file a complaint, and it's in our notification and report of findings letter. But even if you do appeal, if the district appeals or the parent appeals, those correction action items, or that CAP, the correction action plan, is still required to start to be implemented during that kind of holding period of the appeal. So if it might be appealed and it might be overturned, but you still have to start those correction action items, and they will have a due date. Next slide, please. So this is, I realize I didn't put the numbers, so I'm going to kind of share them, and hopefully that will help. But in 2016, there were 15 formal complaints received, and 11 of those had report of findings. And then 4 of them, the gray bar, there was 4 that had no report. They were either dismissed, or they were non-jurisdictional and then they were dismissed, or the parent could have withdrawn them, the complainant could have withdrawn them. So that's kind of the gray box. So the blue box is how many formal complaints came in. The orange box is how many report of findings came out. And then that last gray box is no reports. In 2017, 2018, we had 40 formal complaints. In 2018, 2019, we had 43. In 2019, 2020, there was 29. In 2020, 2021, there was 11. In 21, 22, there was 26. In 2022, 23, there was 32 written complaints. And then last year, 23, 24, there was 47. Just kind of hearing the numbers and seeing it even without the numbers, you might see there might be a reason why. We did get a lower amount of formal complaints during COVID. So next slide, please. And I can send the numbers so that we can maybe get them attached to the slides if anyone wants them. The next part is the due process hearing. Again, it's not the next part, but it's just another dispute resolution option. So the parent or the local school district, that LEA, may request a due process hearing. Again, it has to be related to the identification, evaluation, or educational placement of the child with a disability, or has the provision of FAPE, that free appropriate public education, or the refusal to initiate or change the identification, evaluation, or educational placement. The big thing about due process hearings is that it can go back 3 years, where the formal complaint can only go back 1 year. A due process hearing, you can request it from an allegation from 3 years back. Next slide, please. So things in the due process, this is very similar. Our KRS statute aligns very much with the IDA, the federal one. Name of the child, the address, name of the school the child's attending, again, a description and nature of the problem, and then facts related to the problem. And again, it can be with 3 years to the date for the parent or public agency for that student. And again, it can be timely to have a decision. Next slide, please. So again, the same stuff kind of shared earlier, the information. The school district's responsibility is to inform the parent of availability of mediation. That is always included, and try to resolve it that way if possible. But within 15 days of receiving the notice of the parent request for a due process hearing, the school district must convene a resolution meeting. So that process can't be delayed. The initial meeting needs to happen. Next slide, please. So we do in Kentucky have the quick guide, which kind of helps and talks about the different processes, the mediation, the formal written complaint, and due process. And I think that's on the next slide is the link and the QR code. So we can go, but it just basically helps for parents to know. They can look it up on our site. And then also as directors, you could share that and just know that it's not linear or lateral. You could do a formal complaint without mediation, or you can do mediation without due process. It's not 1, 2, or 3. Next slide, please. So that is the quick guide to special education dispute resolution processes, which just has a chart that does talk about mediation, formal written complaints, and due process. I find it very useful. A lot of times parents will call and ask us, and that's the first thing kind of we share about processes. So some of the dispute trends, we can go to the next slide. This is the Cadre site. It's been referenced this afternoon several times. This data shows the 2022-2023 data. If you decide to open it, you can see where Kentucky falls in line with all the other states. But it's very similar to our data. There was a decline for many states during COVID, and now we're all back up on a trend moving upward. So next slide, please. If you have any questions or comments for me, I think we're maybe going to do some breakout rooms, but if you need me for anything, you can contact me there. That's my email address and my extension. If it is a procedural question, I'll be able to answer it. But if it's not, then I would refer it to our sister department that Marcy's in, so that there isn't any bias or knowledge in case there is a formal complaint sent. But definitely at OSEEL, we can help you as directors in this process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara. And before we go on to the Division of State Schools, as a former director who received a due process complaint, a formal complaint, 6 weeks into my career as a director of special education, I hope that's not happened to any of you all. But I can say you do survive them. You do learn from them. And really the support that I received from KDE throughout my career is part of the reason why I'm here today, helping make the connections with you all, because some of the guidance that they're sharing with you, I didn't have at the beginning of my career. And so I think our State Department's worked really hard to make sure we have the guidance we need to walk through these processes. So if you haven't been in that position yet, you might have just kind of sighed breath of, oh, this is something I'm not dealing with today, so this is not my priority. But this is recorded, and so in the event you ever do have to go through something like that, these are recorded and you can come back and review them, and you now have your connections at the State Department who you can reach out to, because like I said, they in my time, KDE's support for me as a director and walking me through some of these things made all the difference in the world. So that's just my little plug there. But so Shelley and Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you guys at our state schools.
Thank you. My name is Shannon Sparkman. I am the Director of State Schools with the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Shelley Badgett is joining me. She is our Director of Special Education. And we just wanted to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the school, so we appreciate that. Next slide, please. The Division of State Schools oversees the management for the Kentucky School for the Blind and the Kentucky School for the Deaf. Now, both schools serve as a statewide educational resource center for students who are blind, low vision, deaf, or hard of hearing. Next slide, please. We wanted to take a moment just to kind of match some names and faces of our division. This is our Frankfort-based staff. Emma Riley is our Assistant Director of State Schools. She joined us last school year. Shelley Badgett here with me has been here. This is her second year as director, and we're really we have a good opportunity to work well with Shelley and everything that she's done. Her career, she's had many different roles. So she served as principal, she served as instructional supervisor, along with director. So we're really grateful for that opportunity to work with her. Carrie McCrary is our district food operation evaluator. So she oversees and evaluates the food service programs at both schools. And Leslie Cheatham is our administrative specialist, and she joined us this past June. Next slide, please. These are the faces of our principals. Peggy Seclair Morris has been the principal at Kentucky School for the Blind. I believe she started during COVID, so that was her first year as principal, but prior to that, she worked as an outreach director for Kentucky School for the Blind. And then Dr. Lynn Petrie started last year. He was our interim principal, and this year he's been hired in, so he's completing his first year as full hired principal. So we're excited about that. Next slide, please. So I just want to show you some of our educational resources. So for KSB, I'm not going to read through all of those, but primarily we're focusing on visual impairment services. So we're looking at orientation and mobility, Braille instruction, our expanded core curriculum. So we offer day and residential services. So for students that live at a distance and are determined eligible by the ARC, they're able to stay on campus through the week. Next slide, please. KSD educational services. So these are some of the services there. And at KSD, we're really focused on ASL instruction, language acquisition. All of our classes at KSD are taught in sign. And then, of course, we have residential services here as well. Next slide, please. So we do have a quick poll as far as whether or not you currently work with KSD outreach services within your school district. I don't know where we are with poll results, so I was giving everybody a minute to kind of see that. Okay, so good. It looks like quite a few of you have worked with our outreach consultants. Next slide, please. Okay, so the way that we serve as a statewide educational resource, not only providing services on campus for students that are enrolled with us, but is also through our outreach programming. So these are some of the services that are offered across both schools: on-site observations, consultation, do classroom recommendations, student and family events. The setup is regionally based. So our outreach consultants, we have one assigned to each region, and those align with our surtax. And a lot of times those outreach consultants are attending those DOS meetings monthly, so that's a great way to be able to connect with those services. Next slide, please. This slide just outlines a few of the differences between the outreach programs at the schools, and I'm not going to go through those with you. You can read through those, but I wanted you guys to have the information and then also the contacts for our outreach directors at each school. At Kentucky School for the Blind, we have Martin Monson, and at Kentucky School for the Deaf, we have Tony Peevler. Next slide, please. Okay, we have one more poll, and then during this, while you're answering the questions here, then I'm going to change over, and Shelley Badgett's going to tell you a little bit more about placement and give you some tips on ARC and transportation and so forth. So thank you.
Sorry, next slide, please. All right. So for my part, I know that in years past, there has been some changes in how the state schools were run, and way before IDEA, our state schools were kind of parent driven and community driven. But one of the biggest things that, as we look towards regulations and the IDEA, is that LRE, the least restrictive environment, has to be one of the center of our conversations that we talk about when you are thinking about, would this student be best served at one of our schools if they were to actually come here? So obviously, I'm not going to read the regulation, but that is one of the key things because both of our schools are full special education schools, which means that no access to gen ed peers happen if they are placed with us. So we always like to put that at the forefront, that we still can be the least restrictive environment, but that conversation that we have has to be rich and deep and make sure it is the appropriate placement. Next slide, please. So again, when we look at the continuum of services of the LRE, we know that the local education agency has to ensure and consider the continuum there being whether, as we know, I know you make decisions based on these all the time in regular ARC meetings, but is there instruction in regular classes? Is that the best place? Special classes, should we pull them out to have some instruction in some special classes? Next is the special schools, which is what we classify ourselves in. That's why it's underlined for us. And then you have home instruction, and then you have either instruction in a hospital or institution. So when you're looking at the continuum, we really kind of want to focus prior to is that, what has been going on in the district with some special classes, or how has instruction maybe in the regular classes, not been the best place potentially for the student, or maybe it is, but we think that moving to the special schools would be the best placement. So next slide, please. So again, any placement at the Kentucky School for the Blind or the Kentucky School for the Deaf is through the Admissions and Release Committee, the ARC. That is an ARC decision. So like I shared kind of earlier is that, before there was a lot of, oh, I just want to register at one of those schools. Parents, I'm talking way back prior to IDA. It was just, I'm going to go and I'm going to move to Danville, or I'm going to move to Louisville and I'm going to enroll them. So now we still have some parents that, will call us and be like, oh, I'd like to register. And we always have to remind them, like, please work with your director of special ed in your local district. Share your requests. They'll set up a meeting. Usually at that time, the LEA, the DOS, or maybe if you have facilitators, ARC facilitators will reach out to me or even Shannon or anybody or the principal, so that we can be aware that a meeting is going to happen. Because when you're talking about a placement at the Kentucky School for the Deaf or the Blind, you really want to have somebody at those meetings that can speak to the services and the programs that are provided. The discussion has to be looked at with LRE, and a reminder that, there is no general education population. So is that something that, is needed, and we want to discuss and make sure that parents are aware. And the ARC makes the final placement decision. So if there's a disagreement, at this time, the ARC chairperson would have to make that decision, but it is an ARC decision. Next slide, please. So again, when you hold your ARC, if there is a parent request or the district believes that maybe potential placement in LRE should be one of our state schools, a lot of times the chair, we will request, I'm sorry, got lost. The district, you are responsible for chairing those meetings. So those meetings, when there's a first initial idea of who's, we think this might be a good idea, the student is still your student. And so you chair that meeting, you invite us, you can, like I shared, you can invite the principal or myself, you can send us an email. I do want to recognize that, when you're hosting a meeting or an ARC, that you're responsible for ensuring accessibility in compliance with the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if you request us to enter a meeting and one of the teachers that will be there is deaf or hard of hearing, and they request a interpreter, that is your responsibility, because that is your meeting. Upon enrollment, say we go through the ARC and the decision is made that this student would benefit from being at one of the state schools, then we will do a records request and we will request primary enrollment. And then the chairing of the ARCs and all of that will be taken over by myself or my staff. But for districts, I think it's important that you continue to request updates on meetings by saying that you want you provide secondary services, because then that keeps potentially your ability to see all the documents. So, and sometimes it gets a little tricky, and plus districts, which I'll talk about in a few slides, you're also responsible for transportation. So it's always good to still have those students in your system. So, and we discuss LRE every year. So it doesn't matter if the student's been here for 5 years, that LRE discussion and the placement decision, we really make sure that the committee agrees that this is still the best place. Because sometimes, early on, they may learn skills, but then do they want to be placed back in their regular district? Because we have students here who can, have cochlear implants, who are fully deaf. So there's a lot of conversations that happen. So a placement at 1 year does not mean that that is the entire placement for the student's educational experience. Next slide, please. So here's transportation. I'm not going to read you, but there is the KRS. But it is the local district's responsibility for providing transportation to and from our schools. Again, students living at a distance, they may be eligible for residential placement as determined by the ARC. I will share with you, though, that placement and eligibility to be in the residential thing the student has to have some independence. And be able to take care of their self-care needs and things like that. We do have supervision, but we don't have like hands-on, for example, like somebody who cannot bathe themselves or, use the rest. Like there's just extra things that are taken into account with regards to residential. And our residential students, they arrive usually Sunday evenings. Our staff is available, and then they go home Friday afternoons because we do release early on Fridays. Again, if you have questions, because you can get reimbursed for the transportation, and that would be, we have the link there in the PowerPoint for the Division of District Support Pupil Transportation. So you really want your transportation director involved in some of these decisions, because there is a way for some reimbursement for the transportation costs. We have one bus at KSD and a bus that doesn't work at KSB, but we have some state vehicles, but we do not have a transportation department as such. Next slide, please. And just quickly, so the budget, sometimes people, KSB and KSD receive funding through House Bill 1, so the general fund. So we are like a line item in the general funds budget. We do not receive SEEK money a district, if you provide something extra other than transportation, say if a student came to us and they needed extra support with an instructional assistant or a specific related service that is not already provided, because we do have a speech language pathologist, an occupational therapist, and a physical therapist on site. But if there's something else that you provide, you can still be eligible for SEEK funding, even if the child is primarily with us. And that happens through December 1 child count. And I usually will work with Amy Patterson and the district, the DOS, and we work through that to make sure that the funding can be funneled. But it's just good for you to understand that we do not get that money, but we do have gifted and talented funding sources and extended school year. So those are some of the things that all the other districts have. Next slide. So again, we're new in our positions, both Shannon and I, in the last 2 years. I appreciate her kind words with me, but I feel like I've gotten to a point in my career where I finally get to learn some more. these last 2 years. So I don't have all the information or the answers. I don't claim to, I never will, but we are happy to help. We really like it when districts reach out prior to having any conversations. I will share that a reminder, I don't think we had it in the slide, I didn't see it, but for a student to be eligible for one of the state schools, they already have to be eligible in the state of Kentucky. So you have already had to do an evaluation, and they have to be determined eligible under a category, and they have to have a current IEP. So I think I forgot that in one of the slides, but if you have any questions, you can let us know. And I think the next slide is, again, just our contact information. But within our PowerPoint, you saw several faces, so there's lots of people that you can contact. That's it for me. Thank you for letting us kind of share.
Thank you, Shelley and Shannon. I appreciate you all being here. As a new director, sometimes how to work with our state schools and how to get the support you need can be a question that you have. So, Brinley, next slide. All right, we're going to do something a little different today. We are going to go into some breakout rooms, but you're going to, if there's a topic that you want to ask them some specific questions of our presenters today, you can choose that breakout room. So we have 3 different breakout room options for Indicator 8, parent engagement, dispute resolution, or state schools. And our presenters will go into their respective breakout rooms to be able to help facilitate the conversation and answer your questions. And I think probably looking at about 5 minutes in breakout rooms. Okay, hopefully you got to make a connection, and if you didn't get your question asked or fully answered, you know who to contact and who to reach out to ask information. And so you had some opportunities to follow up on what we've talked about today. And so next, we're going to go to our leadership takeaway, and then also we'll have our survey after that. And I just really encourage you to complete the survey, not only so we can be prepared for our next month's meeting, which will be our last meeting for this cohort of new directors, but so we know how to adapt and make improvements for directors to follow in the years to come. So, okay, our leadership takeaway.
So it's actually a pretty simple one today, and it's related to all this stuff we've been talking about. You know, when you're working to improve relationships with parents or other agencies or your staff, when you're managing conflict and engaging with parents in difficult conversations, or having to advocate within your staff and having difficult conversations, the key thing is to always take the high road. And really, what we're talking about there is you always have a choice about how you respond to things. And always, no matter what it is, try and respond in a polite and professional manner. I am someone who, as a former state director, I was named personally in a lawsuit. That's a difficult situation. That causes a lot of stress. It leads to conversations that you don't want to have. But it's important that you always stick to your character, and that you stay again on the positive side of things. Just a quick example: we had a school district in the state where I worked that had a due process filed against them, and the parent's attorney requested all the emails from the school district regarding this parent and family. And what they got was a bunch of emails among staff talking about how crazy this mom was, how terrible of a person she was, all of these terrible things being said about her. And they ended up paying $150,000 a year for the kid to attend a private school in New York. Because of it, because there was evidence that they were not dealing fairly with this parent because of the attitude and those kinds of things. So even we all have those feelings. If you have to express them, express them orally. Don't put them in writing. But really the big thing here is part of being a leader is showing the way and supporting people to be the best that they can be. And then one of the ways that we do that is just by ignoring the negative stuff. Not ignoring might not be the right word. Tolerating the negative and focusing on the positive. In every situation, there is something that you're going to need to do to maintain a relationship, because you're always going to have to come back and deal with these people again, no matter how much it feels like you won't. You always will. You're going to cross paths with them again. So that's the leadership takeaway for today, is just try and all of these difficult things that are going on in our country and all the circumstances and the worry and all of that. Try and take the high road and think about the positive things that you're doing for kids and families and focus on doing those things. Okay. That's it for me today.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. I agree with you completely. You know, it's interesting that if a parent wants to file a due process complaint against us, we as the special ed directors are often the ones that walk them through how to do that. And so that's an opportunity for you to show grace and kindness and begin to build a relationship or mend a bridge if you do that by taking the high road. So I appreciate you giving us that example today, Frank. And again, take a moment to complete the survey, and we hope to see, there's just a few of you left on, but we hope to see everybody back in April.